Hi, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. We will be taking you to Israel's Hula Valley and seeing the great bird migration. We're very fortunate to be here with David Sussman. He's actually physically there right now. So if you have any questions, please type it in the Q&A. We would be thrilled to get to every one of them, hopefully. We want to thank our sponsors, of course. We can't do it without you. Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta, Israel Consulate General of Israel to Southeast, and the Atlanta Jews of Color Council. And our promotional partners, St. Louis Friends of Israel, Club Z, Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation, Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, the End Jew Hatred Movement, Hillel of Georgia, JCRC, the Marcus JCC of Atlanta, Hebrew Order of David International, and of course they put on the fantastic Kosher Barbecue Festival, the Weber School, Congregation B'nai Torah, and B'nai B'rith International. Media partners, thank you so much for getting the word out. Atlanta Jewish Connector, Kids Out and About, Israel Insight, Southern Jewish Life, the AHA Connection, WABE, and Patch. And of course, if you want to get in touch with David after, this is his information. And just to let everybody know, we have a series of tours coming up. So by all means, please share with your friends. Everybody is welcome. We bring these tours to you for free because we want everyone to be able to access Israel and truly see it in real time, what's going on over there. So this is very exciting. Welcome, David. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
I can, and that's a beautiful shot. So I'm going to get off the screen and leave it all to you.
So I will just get started here. And I am so excited, first of all, to be in one of the most beautiful places in all of Israel, the Hula Valley, during one of the most special great bird migration. Now, before we get into it all, let me just do a very quick introduction. Cheryl did a wonderful job. My name is David Sussman. I run an incoming tourism company here that brings schools, synagogues, churches, family groups, anybody who wants to visit Israel. So if you're interested, please contact me either via Facebook, David Sussman Israel Tours, or directly through the Atlanta Israel Coalition, who is also putting together a mission to Israel. So if you're interested in that, you're going to be receiving an email from the Atlanta Israel Coalition after this tour. And they're going to be asking you, if you were to go to Israel, what would be the top sites you want to visit? Because we want to cater this, obviously, to you and to create a very meaningful, powerful trip to Israel that we can all enjoy together. So a big, big thank you to the Atlanta Israel Coalition and all the partners that Cheryl just mentioned, making this all possible. As you know, COVID-19 has been devastating on so many industries, but no industry has been hit the hardest other than the tourism industry, And thank God the borders here in Israel are open and groups are going to begin to come back. But for the last year and a half, I've been making my living by doing virtual tours like this for various organizations. And the Atlanta Israel Coalition, we've already done 5 incredible virtual tours all throughout Israel, including Jerusalem and Hebron and Tel Aviv. And we have several more in addition to today's tour. In 2 weeks' time, on the 28th, the first night of Hanukkah, of course, it'll be before the nighttime, it'll be in the morning of the evening of the first night of Hanukkah. And that's in 2 weeks on Sunday, on November 28th. So today we are in the Hula Valley. And as I mentioned, the Hula Valley is one of the most beautiful places in all of Israel. It's also one of the bread baskets of Israel. And it all began roughly about 1 million years ago. You see, one of Israel's largest source, or in fact, the largest source of natural fresh water, because the largest source of drinking water is actually desalinated water today here in Israel. But before desalination, our largest source of fresh drinking water came from the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee, which is fed by the Jordan River. And the Jordan River flows. This is just so cool. I feel like I'm the story of the Exodus, and Moses told the Red Sea, the Reed Sea, right, to split apart. And here we are with these beautiful reeds just growing all around me. I'm walking through this beautiful tunnel over here. But the Jordan River flows right through the Hula Valley. And roughly about 1 million years ago, there was a slight uplift of some rocks to the southern part of the Hula Valley known as the Golan Heights. And that kind of stopped the flow of the Jordan River a little bit. And it caused the entire valley here to become a marshland, a large swamp. Now, before mankind came here and settled this area, not a big deal. But swamps carry some diseases and some hardships for mankind. And most importantly most significantly is the mosquito population that lives in swampy areas. And mosquitoes bring, you guessed it, malaria. So there was lots of malaria here. Now, fast forward, 1882, not so long ago, but it's the beginning of the modern Zionist revolution, right? Modern Zionism, because Zionism has always existed. Sometimes we think modern Zionism is Zionism, like Zionism started with Theodor Herzl, but Zionism, what is Zionism at its core? Zionism is a love for Eretz Israel, the beautiful land of Israel that was given to us as our inheritance by none other than God himself. It's such a beautiful land that we have over here. However, when the Romans came, when the Byzantine Christians came, when the European Christians, the Crusaders came, when the Muslims were here, Jews, since the destruction of the Second Temple, were treated as second-class citizens, enslaved, and oftentimes deported from our land. And so for 2,000 years, Jews have been spread out all four corners of the world. And in the middle of the 19th century, with the advent of the steam-powered engine, Jews could once again return to the land of Israel, the land of their ancestors, their forefathers, their inheritance. So this is modern Zionism, because all those years Zionism existed, a love for Eretz Israel, a desire to return, but it was really quite impossible. But in 1882, steam-powered engines, ships start to come here from Russia and Eastern Europe and Romania, even America. And Jews began to settle the land once again. And one of the early settlements is just to the south of here in the Hula Valley, a small city today, small village at that time, known as Rosh Pinah. And the Jews of Rosh Pinah tried to cultivate the swampy lands that were all around me at that time. The only problem was the malaria. It was too much. Children were dying, people were dying. It seemed like it was inhospitable and that we would not be able to harness what was here. You know, what we're going to do right now is I'm just heading over to a golf cart. I want to kind of drive around this park a little bit, show us a little bit of everything that this wonderful, amazing park, which I'm going to explain just a little bit, has to offer. So come on over here with me. And don't you worry, I'm going to explain all about where we are. There's a lot of history to cover here. So we do have an hour and a half, and make sure you stay to the end because we got a wonderful video at the very, very end that's kind of going to show you the Hula Valley from up above on a clear day. It's going to be a pre-recorded video. We have a few of them actually to show you from other biblical places here in the you good? You situated? I think you should sit here. You all right? Just talking to my camera guy right here. We're in a golf cart and he's trying to get the best position possible, but we did take a test run earlier today, and my friend Phil here went flying out the golf cart at one point, so we're just making sure he's safe and sound. Anyhow, where were we in this story? 1882, the Jews are coming here, the malaria inhospitable, it's not going to be able to succeed. What are we going to do? Well, after the creation of the state of Israel in 1948, with the help, believe it or not, of the French, who gave us these incredible machines to build trenches, to build canals along the eastern side and the western side of the Hula Valley, and we drained the swamp. We got rid of all of the water. And what was left behind? Black gold. Now, what do I mean by black gold, right? I'm not talking about oil, right? We all wish it was oil, right? Israel's the only country I feel like in the Middle East that doesn't have oil. What's going on here? Anyways, hey, Phil, why don't you just see if you can get this little trench behind you? All right, I'll slow down a little bit, make sure you don't go flying out, okay? You got a little trench over here to the right-hand side of the golf cart. This is one of the trenches that today controls the water levels here in the Hula Valley. It was also one of the trenches that was used to drain the swamps. And what was left behind, as I mentioned before, was black gold, not oil, but an incredibly nutrient-rich soil from 1 million years of decaying organic matter, plants and wildlife alike. And this gave a great opportunity for the kibbutz, the community living communities here known as a kibbutz, the kibbutznikim, to plant orchards and groves and gardens. And this became one of the bread baskets of Israel. Wow, the wind, it is getting windy here. I'm gonna just flip my hat the other way around, otherwise it's gonna blow away. But, you know, Jews here in Israel, in many ways, are like everybody else. And we took advantage of what was given to us. And we overtilled and abused and filled with the nitrates and this and that. And the land here became parched. It went from being a swampland, right? You can see this is all reintroduced swamp area over here. And I'm going to talk about the restoration of the swamp that we have here today, the Agmon Lake. But it became all parched and caverns formed under the ground. And because of all of the fertilizers that had been used over here, fires combusted under the ground, and it was completely just scorched earth policy. It just destroyed the land over here. It became worthless. And we realized that we needed to bring back the swamps in order to save the land, to save the environment. And so the JNF, the Jewish National Fund, Karen Kayemet Israel here in Israel, got together with the National Parks Authority here in Israel, and they created the Agmon Bird Sanctuary here, roughly about 7.5 kilometers. But all together, not just the bird sanctuary, but all together, the nature reserve here is roughly 75,000 square kilometers. So a significant chunk of land that's been preserved here in the Hula Valley in order that this beautiful and truly epic landscape can survive for generations to come. So now, with the reintroduction of these swamps, and we're going to see one later on during the tour, but with the reintroduction of these swamps, we have natural irrigation that is taking place here. And why don't you scan to the other side, Phil? You can see that with this natural irrigation, the land is not parched anymore. And you have these huge fields. We have mangoes and pomegranates and corn that grows here and wheat that grows here and avocados that grow here. Really so many various types of citrus trees and produce that's grown in the Hula Valley. And I'm not trying to be funny here, but this beautiful green field you have here, this is actually hummus plants. This is going to be hummus, we call it in America, right? These are chickpeas that are growing here. They're just baby chickpea plants, but pretty soon they'll be about, I don't know, about 2 feet high. And we'll go ahead and pick those chickpeas and give them a good soak and make some yummy hummus, of course, hummus that us Israelis enjoy so much. And of course, you can get some really good Israeli hummus as well, the Sabra brand hummus in your local supermarkets, most likely. And if they don't have it, you should ask them to carry it, because we are definitely looking for more people to sell our wonderful Israeli products too. So we are just cruising around this bike path. We might see some people who are biking here later on today. It's a bike path, it's a walking path, and of course it's here for the golf carts that we're riding around in. as well. So where are we? Where exactly are we in the map of the world? Where are we in the map of Israel? Okay, so let's just start with the map of Israel. Okay, the Hula Valley, the finger of Israel, it juts out to the north, the most northern part of Israel, the Hula Valley, the very, very tip of that finger being Metula, another modern Zionist community developed in 1882 with the influx of these Zionists who came finally because of the steam-powered engine. And they built up Metula, the very, very northern part. In fact, if you have a map of Israel, or you could pull one up on your phone if you're watching on your computer, and you can just look up Metula, you'll see it's the very top of the Hula Valley. And the Hula Valley separates two important mountain ridges. One mountain ridge to the east, which is part of the mountains of the Galilee. It's behind me now. Phil's trying to get a shot of it. It's very hazy. We have a very windy day, but it looks as though you guys got a good shot of it. So the mountain ridge that you see over there, part of the Galilee mountains, right, is known as the Naftali Ridge. Naftali, okay, Naftali was one of the tribes of Israel. And how many tribes of Israel were they? Well, all of us Jews that are here today know the answer, but maybe some of our Christian friends and friends of various faiths that are with us today aren't so familiar. There are 12 tribes, and these are the 12 sons of Jacob. And every week in synagogues around the world, we read a certain portion known as a parsha, a certain portion of the Torah. And we just read the portion known as Vayetze. And in Vayetze, it talks about Jacob leaving the land of Israel because of his wicked twin brother Esau. Esau in Hebrew, I think it's Esau in English. And he goes to his wicked uncle's house, Lavan, and that's where he's going to marry Rachel, and of course Leah as well. In fact, he marries Leah first and then marries Rachel. And during that time, he also gives birth to the 12 tribes. One of those tribes is Naftali. And here in the land of Israel, just like in America, you have regions or counties. So here we have regions as well, territories, counties, if you will. And our counties are named after the biblical tribes, the tribes of Israel, and the area which was given to them as an allotment. And so the mountains behind me to the east are the Naftali Mountains, because that was the tribal territory of Naftali. And straight ahead of us to the west is the Golan Heights. In Hebrew, Ramat Golan, the Golan Heights. And the Golan Heights, believe it or not, it's its own topographical region. In fact, Israel is the size of New Jersey. Oh, check it out. We have some bikers. Looks like somebody got a little tired. They're off their bike. Hopefully they're not off their rocker. But here we got some bikers enjoying a bike ride around the Hula Valley and the sanctuary. What we're going to do is we're going to pull off right here. And we are at one of the swamps that was reintroduced to this area. And we're going to see its majestic beauty in just a minute. Okay. Let me just finish up here also, just because we got this great view of the Golan Heights. So you got the Golan Heights, its own topographical region here in Israel, the size of New Jersey. We have such a diversity of landscape. Some of it's limestone, some of it's chalk, some of it is, desert land down in Eilat and the Aravan, of course, the Dead Sea. Well, the Golan Heights, totally volcanic rock. It's all volcanic rock. Let me just grab my keys. Thank you, sir. Keys to the golf cart. So that's where we are here in Israel, okay? We are in the Hula Valley, nestled between two mountain ridges, shalom. We have now to my left over here, Ramat Naftali, the mountains of the Galilee. And to my right, you have the Golan Heights and all the extinct volcanic mountains over there that formed it. And in the middle, you have this very unique ecosystem known as the Hula Valley. And this is part of the swamp that was reintroduced here in this area to preserve the ecology and the wonderful, beautiful wildlife that we have over here. And this area here has over 390 different species of vegetation, animals, and of course, birds that pass through this area during the two bird migrations, one in the fall and one in the spring. In the spring, when the birds are returning from Africa, they are beelining it to get home because, of course, it's also mating season. But here in the fall, after flying some of these birds for 22 hours straight, from as far north in Europe as Finland and the Ukraine and Poland and Lithuania and all of these Eastern European birds that are like, hey, these poles are crazy. It's too cold here. They're heading down south, right? It's like when Americans turn about 60, 65, maybe today it's like 70, and they live in the Northeast like many Jews do. And they're like, wait a second, why did it take me 75 years to realize that it's cold? I'm moving to Atlanta, or I'm moving to Boca Raton, or somewhere where it's a little bit warmer. Those birds every year, they're like, we're out of here. We're snowbirds. We're heading south. We're heading to Africa. Well, in order to get to Africa from Europe, you need to pass through Israel, okay? And not only Europe, but if you want to get to Africa from Asia, which Israel is really technically part of Asia, it's Western Asia. We all call it the Middle East for some reason, but it's really Western Asia. Any of the birds coming from Asia as well, heading down to Africa, are passing through the land of Israel, which means that the Hula Valley is one of the premier sites for bird watchers anywhere in the world. Because on any given day here, you can find birds that are native to Africa, native to Europe, and native to Asia. In fact, today we have flamingos that are coming in, right? Before they're white flamingos because they turn pink when they're in Africa, eating all the shrimps in the waters over there. We have flamingos. We have pelicans. What are pelicans doing here? But we have pelicans that are flying across Europe, passing through this beautiful area and heading down south. So just a beautiful, beautiful view here of the lake. One more gander of it. You can see some birds. Hopefully it's coming out in the video. You can see some birds landing over there. Tonight, there's probably about 75,000 birds that are going to be, making the Hula Valley their home this evening, maybe even more. Tens of thousands of storks that are passing through. And as I mentioned before, the flamingos and the pelicans and the songbirds, and really so many different types of birds. But one of the animals, and we just have a picture here, I've only seen them here a couple times. Maybe we'll get lucky, we'll see one today, but that's the wild boar, okay? You can see a picture of it here, the wild boar, wild pig. And it's very interesting, wild boar and pigs in Israel. Everybody knows pigs aren't kosher. What are pigs doing here in Israel? Well, they live here, right? It's part of the wildlife. But when archaeologists discover a new site to excavate, one of the things they look for, you see all those birds coming in, is that not gorgeous? That is beautiful. And this is nonstop. I mean, it's thunderous here. It's loud. You can hear all the birds making the noise. I don't know if my microphone's picking it up or not, but we sure hear it over here. And hopefully you guys will all make it here, in person, here to the land of Israel, and you'll be able to witness this yourself live, because, I've traveled around the world, and thank God I was able to hike the Grand Canyon a few years ago, but I've been in Africa as well, and have seen on safari and the 5 big animals of Africa. And this is as epic and on par of any of those places that I've been to, as far as its sheer beauty and just incredible wildlife. I mean, it's sometimes you just have nothing to do but laugh because it's just such an incredible sight to see. So I'm just going to go ahead and start my golf cart up. If I can turn the key. There we go. Take a quick little sip. Oh, look at those birds. That is gorgeous. You know what? At first, I thought it was a bad thing with all these clouds, but it's actually giving really, I'm looking at the video right now, it's actually giving such a beautiful view. Ooh, can you guys hear that? Gosh, it's incredible. So we are going to continue here on the golf cart. And where was I on my story? We're talking about the topography and where we are in the world. And that in front of us, we have the Golan Heights. Behind us, we have the Naftali Ridge and the mountains of the Galilee. But where are we in the world? Well, I kind of gave it away when I was talking about the bird migration, because I said when the birds have to come through, when the birds come through from Europe or Asia going towards Africa, they have to go through Israel. So we are really in the center of the known world, okay? And I emphasize known world because when we talk about history, we talk about this region as being the known world, and we don't really think about the unknown world and the great empires that existed there as well, like the Aztec Indians, the Native Americans who lived in South America, and the Mayans, right, who had huge cities. In fact, in the 16th century, not so long ago, 500 years ago, the largest city in the world, I believe, was the Aztec capital in Mexico City. So really just here in the known world, though, Israel stands in the center. Now, many of us are people of faith here today. And whether we are Christians or Muslims, or like myself and many of you, Jewish, we see Israel as being a central part of our spirituality and of our faith. But it's also the physical center of the known world. And all the great men of history, right? Who are the great men of history? Well, one modern great man we could say is Winston Churchill. Right? Winston Churchill wasn't Winston Churchill. Maybe we don't have Great Britain today, right? Maybe all of Europe is Germany, right? He was a great military strategist, but he could also read men. And he understood that Hitler was a bad dude, and that the only way to stop Hitler's agenda is to defeat Hitler himself. But let's talk about some of the ancient people, right? Let's talk about Alexander the Great, right? Genghis Khan and the Mongols. We have the pharaohs of ancient Egypt, and all of them have their own unique aspects and personalities and things that they did. But the pharaohs, when they wanted to capture lands in the north, in Mesopotamia, where did they have to cross through? They had to cross through the land of Israel. When Babylon wanted to go down to Africa and the Assyrian Empire, when they traveled south, they traveled through the land of Israel. And of course, on their way, they waged war against us. We know the Babylonians were successful, and we were enslaved and captured for 70 years until the story of Purim and our return here to our lands. The Assyrians did a pretty good job on us, but they weren't able to defeat Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, stopped by King Hezekiah. Boy, that wind is picking up. But they all had to pass through the lands. And, interestingly enough, everybody knows Genghis Khan and the Mongols, but the place that Genghis Khan and the Mongols were actually defeated here in the land of, and on their quest to capture Africa was here in the land of Israel, just south of Tiberias. Got some bikers here. Might want to get out of our way. Thank you. Shalom. Oh, just got some dust right in my eye and in my mouth. But the place that the Mongols were defeated was just south of Tiberias, near a kibbutz known as Levi, and they were defeated by the Mamelukes. Whoa! The Mamelukes were an Egyptian empire, but most people haven't heard about them. But they actually defeated the Mongols right here in the land of Israel. So what I'm going to do right now is we are going to just cut away to our first video. And our first video has two parts to it. The first part is going to talk a little bit about the headwaters of the Jordan River. The Jordan River, which flows through the Hula Valley, which created the large swampland, which was drained in the 1950s and reintroduced in the early 1990s. Oh, she started already, looks like. No, the first part is going to be the headwaters of the Jordan River, and the second part is going to be about a biblical site here in the Hula Valley known as Tel Dan. Dan, another tribe of Israel. This was their area, their center. And of course, we know when the tribes of Israel split, the northern 10 tribes had succumbed to idol worship. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the video. So, Lee, if you could go ahead and roll the video, and we'll see you guys here shortly. Did you mute me?
There's no volume at all, guys. I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties. We will be fixing those, and you'll see soon.
All right. I do not have headphones on, so I don't know about the sound problems. But Lee, if you turn on your microphone, because it's being played from your computer, your microphone on your computer will pick up the sound. The Jordan River runs approximately 156 miles or 220 kilometers. It's significant both in Judaism as well as Christianity. In Judaism, it's the site where the Israelites crossed the Jordan River and into the Promised Land after being enslaved by the Egyptians in the book of Exodus. For Christians, they believe it's here that John the Baptist baptized Jesus. Today, the Jordan River is Israel's second largest supply of fresh water, only behind desalinated Mediterranean seawater. However, in the early years before desalination, the Jordan River was Israel's lifeline. Today, with the peace treaty that we have with the nation of Jordan, Israel provides to them 50 million cubics of water every year. And this has taken a mighty strain on the Jordan River. By the time it reaches its endpoint, which is the Dead Sea, it's merely a trickle of water. In order to combat this, Israel wants to desalinate water and pump it to Jordan rather than taking it from the Jordan River. The Tel Dan Nature Reserve. It's one of the few places in Israel where one can amble through a wild, natural forest. The thick canopy here gives this mysterious glow with the chirping birds and pools of flowing water. It's in striking contrast to the rest of the arid climate that's found here in Israel. In addition to the abundant amount of hiking trails here and little nooks that people can sit down and enjoy the beautiful nature here, it also has an abundant amount of biblical archaeology that dates back to the First Temple period. But before we visit those ruins, let's go discover one of the unique industries that's located here on the banks of the Dan River. Roughly 35 years ago, the Avishai family saw that the waters of the Dan River was a perfect environment to raise river trout. Today, they raise thousands of these fish, which is sold domestically here in Israel. However, about 20 years ago, they began to raise sturgeon in order to collect its highly coveted eggs to create black caviar, which is sold to some of the finest restaurants around the world. One of the darkest periods in Israeli history is when the 12 tribes of Israel became divided. It happened during the First Temple period at the end of the rule of King Solomon. You had the southern 2 tribes led by Judah, who retained control of Jerusalem and the Holy Temple. The northern 10 tribes was led by King Jeroboam. He built for himself a major city here in Dan. The fortifications of the city was refortified by King Ahab, who was an extremely wealthy king who built the walls that you can see behind me now. It tells us in the Bible, in the book of Kings, that the king would sit in the gates of the city along with the elders and judges. Well, archaeologists here have uncovered an area which is believed to be the spot in which the king's throne would have sat, right inside the city gates, along with a bench where the elders and judges would have sat. It's amazing when you come here to Tel Dan, you actually see the Bible come to life. The fortifications here at Tel Dan were massive. The walls alone rose up to 45 feet. At the base, the walls were 180 feet wide. Still, with these massive fortifications, Tel Dan could not stand the wrath of the Assyrian army, whom arrived here in the year 732 BCE and destroyed the city and conquered the entire northern 10 tribes. The Assyrians took most of the population here and sent them off into an exile. Those Jews would become known as the lost 10 tribes of Israel. Then, in order to maintain control of this area, the Assyrians brought in people from other nations that they conquered. These foreign people intermingled with the Jews who still remained here in the north, and a new people were born from this marriage, who will be known as the Samaritans. Come with me as we explore more of Tel Dan. Back in the early 1990s, when archaeologists were still excavating here at Tel Dan, biblical archaeologists were divided into 2 camps. You had the minimalists and the maximalists. The minimalists didn't believe in the existence of King David or King Solomon, whereas the maximalists believed all the stories of the Hebrew Bible. Well, in the 1990s, archaeologists discovered right where I'm standing a stone stela, which is today on display at the Israel Museum, that was written by the king in Damascus in the 8th century BCE, just a mere 100 years after King David ruled in Jerusalem, that said, "I have defeated the king of Judah from the house of David." It's incredible how in the last 30 years, archaeologists have discovered so much here in the land of Israel, the land of the Bible, that proves the historical accuracy of our Holy Scripture. Come with me as we discover more. You know, I'm always filled with mixed emotions when I come to this particular place here in Tel Dan. On one side, I am always ecstatic when we have archaeological evidence that proves the Hebrew Scriptures. And here we have archaeological evidence showing us the story which we can read in the first book of Kings, where Jeroboam, the first king of the northern 10 tribes, in trying to prevent his people from visiting Jerusalem, will build a temple here dedicated to the god Baal, complete with a golden calf and all. Behind me, you can see the remnants of the original altar, along with an illustration of how it looked like nearly 2,900 years ago. And where I'm standing now is a platform on which the golden calf stood. So again, on one hand, here we have archaeological evidence, once again proving the historical accuracy of the Hebrew scripture. But on the other hand, here's the northern 10 tribes of Israel falling victim to idol worship, which will be the spiritual reason for their physical ending at the hands of the Assyrians in the year 732 BCE. Another sensational find here at Tel Dan is the mud brick gate you can see behind me, which archaeologists have dated back to the 18th century BCE, which is the time period of Abraham, our forefather. If you read in the book of Genesis, it mentions how Lot, who was Abraham's nephew, was captured. Abraham then takes 318 of his best men and he chases the culprits all the way to the city of Dan, which at the time was known as Laish, which means that Abraham arrived to the city gate right here and walked under that arch. But how do mud bricks survive 3,800 years? Well, archaeologists have discovered that the residents of this area purposefully covered over the gate. Why? We don't know. But this is the reason why it has survived all these years. Another interesting fact about this gate is that it's an arch. Up until this point, archaeologists believed it was the Romans who invented the arch. But here we have a mud brick arch that dates back nearly 2,000 years before the Roman Empire even existed. Give me a little finger when I'm on.
We could hear you, David, but we can't see you yet. Oh, perfect.
So the Agmo, well, first of all, I hope you enjoyed the Jordan River. Just incredible, first of all, Abraham's gate. I mean, that is the gate Abraham walked through. To me, that's mind-blowing. But let's return here to where we are, the Agmon Bird Sanctuary. And nestled within this reserve are lots of cabins like the one I'm in right now. Kind of keeps you hidden from the birds and from the wildlife that's here, like the boar that I mentioned before. But there's also wolves in this area. And in order that you can just take a gander out into the beautiful nature. And so some of the birds have landed here. And there's actually a ranger who I just spoke with who was here. And I kind of asked why it doesn't seem like there's a lot of birds coming in. And they said, well, because of the bad weather, sometimes they look for places that are more sheltered, a little bit more hidden. And they'll land at different times, right? The sun, you don't really see setting, but there in the water, you can see many cranes that are perched out there as well. And probably some pelicans out there, right? Little toucan Sams maybe. So when you're looking out, you can see the Naftali Ridge straight ahead. And like I said, we're perched right in between those two mountain ranges there. And this is part of what is known as the Syrian African Rift. Okay, come with me. It's a little windy. We're gonna go back to the golf cart. The ranger actually told me let's switch sides. Told me a great place that hopefully there's gonna be some birds coming in. So we're just gonna drive our golf cart over there. But while we're walking there, I'll just talk a little bit about this area and how it formed. Mountains to the left of me, mountains to the right, and here I am stuck in the middle with you. So here in the Hula Valley, it's not just the Hula Valley, right? The Hula Valley to the south becomes the Sea of Galilee, which is the Kinneret here, known as Kinneret here in Israel, which is actually the lowest on earth body of fresh water, right? What's the lowest body of water anywhere in the world? That's the Dead Sea, right? That's the lowest place in the world that you can walk on dry land. So the water is obviously the lowest water as well. So we have the lowest salt body, the lowest water altogether, and the lowest fresh water, the Kinneret. Then you have the Jordan Valley, right? South of the Jordan Valley, you have what we just talked about, the Dead Sea, the lowest place on earth. Then you have a very unique ecosystem, a unique desert. Israel's got 4 deserts. The most famous is the Negev. It's the largest. Yeah, you can hear a lot of noise here. I don't know if it's picking up on the mic, but you have 4 unique deserts. You have the largest and the most famous is the Negev Desert. Just watch where you're stepping, Phil. You have the Judean deserts. Okay, this is where Masada is located. And you have the Arava Desert that I just mentioned. And of course, a little bit of the Sinai Desert that stretches into Israel and the Eilat Mountains and the most southern tip of Israel, which from one of those mountains, you can actually look out and see Saudi Arabia. A lot of people don't realize that. You can see Jordan, Egypt, and of course, standing in Israel. So 4 of the great nations here in the Middle East. So south of the Jordan Valley, you have the Dead Sea. South Dead Sea, you have the Arava Valley, and then you have the Red Sea. And the Red Sea goes into the Indian Ocean. So all of this is part of a huge fault line. And I know it's early in the East Coast, so I don't know how many people we have tuned in here from the West Coast. If you're from the West Coast, give a little thumbs up, let us know. In fact, at any time, go ahead and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you and get feedback. There we go.
David, we have a question.
5. There we go.
We have a question.
Great.
So the question is, when is the best time in the spring to see bird migration?
Hey, can you say it one more time?
When is the best time in the spring to see bird migration?
Excellent question. I'll answer actually both for the spring and the fall. So the springtime here, spring is early, right? We joke around here in Israel. We have half the year is summer. You have how's it go again? Half the year is summertime. You got about 1/8, I guess, of fall, 1/8 of spring, and then we got 1/4 of winter time. So they're very short in their seasons, the spring and the fall. So the best time in the spring is late February until maybe the beginning of April. That would be the latest. And then for the fall, it already starts mid-October until the end of November. That's roughly the time to come here. Oh, I see a lot of birds perched out in the water over there. I'm gonna see if we can get close up there. Let me just see how I can do it. I think I could just cut over here. Does it say no golf carts? Yes, it does. Hold on one second. What we are going to do is we're just going to park over here, a little bit off-road, and we are, oops, hit the gas. I'm just going to bring you myself. Cheryl, let me know if you can hear the noises here from the birds. Phil, let me know if you get an answer.
We can hear a little, not.
Can you hear the noises?
It's not very loud yet.
All right, I'm gonna bring you a little bit closer. I hope I don't fall into the water here.
We have a bird
All sorts of
expert
wild
with
animals
us.
here too, including snakes. So you got to be a little careful. I'm gonna take
David?
you all the way up to the water, and just to show you a little bit where we are right here. I know it's kind of dark. Turn the light up on your screens. But they're coming in from the tens of thousands. I wish there was a way I could zoom, but there is no zoom on Zoom. Isn't that ironic? No zoom on Zoom. And look at those birds out there. I come here every year. I bring my kids here to see the bird migration. They absolutely love it. It's one of our favorite times of the year. And usually at this hour, sunset, you would see just really a lot more birds. I'm sorry to say, but this bad weather, here comes some birds. I'm actually gonna run it over. It looks like they're flying over here. Let's see if we can capture them. from where I am. I don't know if it's coming out on the video so well, but anyhow, we got some crazy weather here. And okay, here we go. You can see some bikers coming in right here as we head back to our golf cart. Sure, they're getting a little dust in their eyes. I know I am. So let's get a little bit more into what I was talking about before. The what's going on here? Oh, there we go.
We have a few more questions if you have a moment, David.
Sure thing.
Are there any other locations in Israel that are good for bird watching, or is Hula Valley and this nature reserve where you are
Yeah, it's cool.
located the premier location?
Sorry about that. We just had somebody ask a question. That's so crazy for me. I'm hearing a little echo here. So there are other places that you can do some bird watching. The other great place to do bird watch. First of all, there's a lot of places to do bird watching, but let's just call it the epic spots. The Hula Valley is the main location. A lot of these birds will not stop again here in Israel, but many of them do stop again one last time in Eilat. In Eilat, there are a lot of pools. There are a lot of fish farms and man-made reservoirs in that area and a lot of food. So they might take one more stop, some of these birds, before they head down into Africa, where obviously some of the lands are a little bit parched, a little bit dry, not the best place to take a rest. Some of it's sandy. So they'll take a rest in Eilat. You can do some bird watching in Eilat as well. But really, all over Israel, we get some great spots, because anywhere you're going to have water and a place for these birds to rest, you'll have birds there. But when people come in internationally, right? People come to Israel for all sorts of reasons. People come here for spiritual, right? First and foremost, people usually come to Israel. It's the land of the Bible. They want to connect to their faith in some way, to their Jewish heritage. Look at that. That's also really beautiful. Were we able to make anything out there? Are you capturing any of that?
We're seeing some of it. Yeah, it's gorgeous. Where did the birds stop before the swamp reclamation development
Watch your
started?
step, Bill.
Where did the birds stop before the swamp reclamation? Question.
I didn't hear it.
Where did the birds stop when the Hula Valley wasn't working?
You know what? That's an excellent question. It's a question that I've wondered that I haven't gotten really an answer for. But obviously, wild animals are very resourceful, so they find their places too, and they know where to go to find their water. This is just the ideal flight pattern, probably for various reasons. And so once it was reintroduced, they immediately came back here, right? It's like water always flows to the lowest location. It'll figure out its way. If one gets blocked up, it'll go another way. But when that blockage is released, it's reopened, water is going to flow through there once again. So that's sort of with the bird migration as well. This is just the optimal flight pattern and place for those birds to fly through. And that is the Syrian African Rift that I've been talking about a little bit here and there, which extends from the Red Sea. In fact, the Red Sea is part of the Syrian African Rift, and it runs all the way up to the foothills of the Taurus Mountains, which is located in Turkey. In fact, it's the largest fault line in the entire world. A lot of people don't realize that. When Americans, obviously, when we think of fault lines, we think California and San Andreas Fault. Syrian African Rift puts San Andreas Fault to shame. We have earthquakes here in Israel. In fact, we have them all the time. We just have lots of minor ones. We have big earthquakes here once every 300 years or so. And the last major earthquake that we had was in 1836, roughly about 180 years ago now. And it completely rocked and devastated the city of Tzfat. And we also had a wonderful virtual tour in Tzfat. So if you guys want to learn more about Tzfat, when you get your email from the Atlanta Israel Coalition, there'll be a link there where you can watch some of the previous tours that we did here in Israel. And I hope you're enjoying today's tour. I know that we got a lot of positive feedback from previous tours, but we're open to all types of feedback. So if you have suggestions on how we can make this better, we are happy to hear it. And also, if you want to show your appreciation to me directly, you could go ahead and leave a donation to the Atlanta Israel Coalition so that we can make more of these videos and bring you here to Israel and bring you to the front lines and various events that are happening here, not just virtual tours, but events that are happening here in Israel. So keep you connected to the land of Israel, the land of the prophets and the kings of Israel. And of course, if you want to leave anything specifically for me, just put, for David Sussman, and the Atlanta Israel Coalition is really wonderful in getting all any of those tips my way. So it would be greatly appreciated. Now, don't forget, at the end, we have this great video. I know the sun sets early here in Israel. And at the very end, I have this wonderful video from the Menorah Cliffs from the capital of the Hula Valley, a city known as Kiryat Shmone, right? The village of the eight. And there's a place there called the Menorah Cliffs. And the Menorah Cliffs have this wonderful gondola ride up to the top of the mountain. And from the top of the mountain, you can view the entire Hula Valley, the Golan Heights. And we were there not so long ago. And just like the video we showed you on the headwaters of the Jordan River and Tel Dan. So we talk a little bit about the Menorah Cliffs, and we go up to the top and enjoy some of those really wonderful views from the top. So we're going to share that with you, of course, at the end of the tour. So stick around for that video. It's definitely going to be worth the wait.
So we have some more questions, David.
We have lots of small earthquakes. Question? Oh, hold on. I'm getting the AirPods.
Oh, no. Oh, no. One moment, please. Difficulty hearing.
Sure, if it's not a good
hold
time.
on one second here. We just had a little technical difficulty here. Go ahead and repeat that question, please.
So someone wrote that they saw storks landing on camels in the Negev in August of 1972. Is that unusual?
No, so I don't know how to answer that. It's not unusual to see the storks passing through the Negev. There is a hiking trail here in Israel. I'm an avid hiker. About 13 years ago, I did a trail called Shvil Yisrael, the Israel National Trail. Literally took me 3 months. It was roughly about 700 miles long, and it goes all through Israel. And when I was in the northern western Negev, I found myself in these fields with just tens of thousands of storks. It was the springtime passing through. And also there were camels in that area. So I would imagine that some of those storks probably did land on some camels. I can't say that I've seen it myself, so I don't know how often it happens. But yes, it probably does happen, and it wouldn't surprise me because those storks are passing through. The camels are here to stay.
And the next one is when they reintroduced swamps.
That
there a mosquito
earthquake in
problem?
1836 completely destroyed the city of Tzfat, which is just on top of the Naftali Ridge in front of us, not far from here, maybe about a half-hour's drive. It's one of the four.
The question was when they returned the island, was there a problem with mosquitoes?
Oh, excellent. So the question was, is there an issue with mosquitoes today? So anywhere you're going to have water, you're going to have mosquitoes. We don't really have an issue with malaria here in Israel. I'm here without bug spray. Phil, you got it? I'm not suffering from any mosquitoes. Definitely when I go camping with my kids at the Sea of Galilee, the Kinneret, there's definitely mosquitoes there. So we do have mosquitoes here, part of life. But I wouldn't call it a problem. Definitely not a problem like it was in the early years when they were also bringing malaria with them as well, which we all know can be deadly. Sure is getting dark here. There's no headlights on this out there. Surprised. I think this is the route. Sorry, just dropped something. I was actually in an earthquake here. In 2004, I said how we have like these minor earthquakes. So one of the earthquakes that we had, no, straight. one of the earthquakes that we had that was, somewhere between minor and significant was in 2004. Maybe it was 2003. I was in Yerushalayim. I was actually studying. I was in a class. I was in school. And it knocked books off the shelf. And you could feel it. And that was the last real quasi-major one that we had. But we have earthquakes here all the time, bigger than San Andreas Fault. That's the Syrian African Rim. It's 3,600 miles long, 3,600 miles long, 6,000 kilometers for our Canadian friends who are with us, making it the largest rift anywhere in the world. So what we're doing right now is we're just heading back, and I'm going to let the camera guy, my dear friend here, Phil, go ahead and return the golf cart, and I'm going to bring you into the visitor center. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the top of the visitor center. There's beautiful lookout points, and we have two great videos. In fact, don't cue it up just yet, Lee. I'll tell you when to do it. But the next video that we have is of a well, it's not really a biblical site. It's an important site to know about, just talking about the diversity of the various groups of people who were here. And I talked about Genghis Khan and the Mongols and how they were defeated by the Mamelukes. And so we're going to watch now a video on a fortress that was built at the northern part of the Hula Valley on a mountain known as Hermon that overlooked the area. And it's really stunning. So Lee, go ahead and roll that video on Nimrod's fortress. Welcome to one of the...
Oh, are we on Tel Hatzor or Nimrod's fortress?
When we get here, you're gonna have to...
They've got.
He said Nimrod's fortress, Lee.
Oh, so I messed up. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me bring that one up.
Thank you.
That's fine. Halfway up Mount Hermon and just behind me is Nimrod's fortress. It gets its name from the biblical character and arch nemesis of Abraham, Nimrod. It was built by the Muslims who feared that the Crusades would move further east and conquer their capital city of Damascus. It also governed and controlled the major trade route between Damascus and the Egyptian Empire with its capital in Cairo. Let's now head over to the fortress to get a better understanding of its history in its entirety. The fortress was originally constructed by Al-Aziz Uthman, the nephew of the great Kurdish Sultan Salahuddin, who ruled most of the Middle East at that time. It was quickly renovated. By 1230, it's expanded and fortified. However, already in 1260, it's conquered by the Mongols, who came from Asia and entered the land of Israel from the north. The fortress reached its pinnacle in both size and beauty during the reign of the Sultan Baybars, the first sultan of the Mamluk people. He conquered it after defeating the Mongols just outside of Tiberias in the year 1267, and he put the fortress in the hands of his most trusted friend, Bilik, who oversaw the reconstruction and expansion of the fortress. Bilik wanted to memorialize his dear friend, the Sultan Baybars, and he had etched the largest Arabic inscription ever to be found here in Israel. It glorifies both Baybars and, of course, God. Who were the Mamluk people? They were a slave warrior class, many of them kidnapped as young children during the Second Jihad from the Balkans, from Turkey, and as far as Eastern Europe. They were raised as Muslims, trained as warriors to protect the throne. But when the Ayyubid Sultan died, who was ruling from Cairo, they took over the throne. There was a military coup, and they ruled Egypt as well as the land of Israel for over 300 years. And in doing so, they left their imprint throughout the entire land. Many of their ruins and buildings can still be seen today in the Muslim quarter of Jerusalem. Now let's continue as we explore this fortress further. This fortress is amazing. It has these huge towers and massive walls, secret passageways, big, beautiful cisterns and water fountains. I mean, when they built this, they didn't just have security in mind, they wanted it to be luxurious as well. When the Crusades were finally defeated in their capital city of Akko and chased out of the Holy Lands, the importance of the fortress fell, and it began to be neglected. But it wasn't until the 1700s, the 18th century, when a mighty earthquake shook its foundations, that it fell into the ruins that we find here today.
Hi, David. We could see you.
You need to unmute.
Okay, great. Fantastic. I can see now. I'm actually holding the camera now. I got my camera guy's not with me right now, so I have his headphones in, but it's coming in like a second late. So I can see it's very dark right now. You could just see my face because I got the lights of this tractor in my face, but I'm walking along a river right now. And I really just wanted to talk a little bit about the biblical parsha that we've been reading. I mentioned that it was Vayetze. It was the time that Yaakov left the land of Israel. Jacob, he headed up north to his wicked uncle Lavan's house. And in this week's parsha, he returns to the land of Israel after 20 years. So if you guys don't know the biblical narrative, Yaakov goes to his uncle's house, Lavan. This is where all the golf carts are. I'm just going to walk through here. It's got a little bit more light here as we exit the Agmon Bird Sanctuary. But the biblical narrative is that Yaakov runs from his wicked twin brother Esau, or Esav in Hebrew, and he ends up in his uncle Lavan's house. He wants to marry Rachel. He says, work for 7 years. He works for 7 years, and Lavan gives him Leah. So he marries Leah, and then he says, I want to marry Rachel too. He ends up marrying Rachel, but he's got to work for another 7 years. And then he works for another 6 years. So he ends up spending 20 years in the house of Lavan, working. He's described in the Bible as an Ishtam, as a simple man, a man who dwells in the tents. But now he finds himself a worldly man, a man who has to earn his own keep. He has to look behind his shoulder all the time. He's got this uncle's trying to rip him off. And he comes here to the land of Israel. And Esav is high on his tail, and Esav wants to kill him. And he says, what am I going to do when my brother sees me? I can't keep my family here all together, because if we lose, then we all die. And so he splits his camps. He puts one to the east, one to the west, sort of like what we've been seeing here today, the mountains to the left, mountains to the right. And he says if he catches one family, at least one part of the family will survive. And he goes by himself in a quiet place in order to meditate, in order to pray, in order to talk to God. But he looks down at a river, just like the rivers that we saw here in the Hula Valley. And for the first time in 20 years, he saw the reflection of his own face, and he couldn't recognize himself. And so many of the biblical commentary speaks about how Yaakov wrestled with the angel of Esau, and he hurt his thigh, right? He always had a limp after this scene in the Bible. But it wasn't the angel Esau. I also heard a commentary that maybe it was his own angel. He wrestled with himself and he asked that all-important question that really all of us need to ask. And that is, who am I? Am I a worldly man, all about the physical material, all about the work? Or am I a spiritual man? Am I Ishtam? Am I somebody who's trying to connect to my soul and to do greater things in the world and to do tikkun olam, to leave the world a better place than it was when I was born, when I found it? And this is where Yaakov got the name Yisrael. And this is why we are known as Bnei Yisrael, the 12 tribes of Jacob. He also got the name Yisrael, which means to wrestle, right? To wrestle with God, to wrestle with oneself, to toil in self-discovery, something that all of us, I think, really need to delve into and to try and figure out more and more every day. Hold on one second, Phil. Just take this and just show me the... Hold on one second, folks. I'm sorry. So I know I queued up Nimrod's Fortress. There's two other videos that are really important. I told you that wait until the end because we got this great video for you. But before we go there, I would like to show you Tel Chatzor. It's an important biblical site here in the Hula Valley, and I know you're going to appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in 5 minutes when you return here as I introduce, hopefully, what will be a grand finale, and that will be the video of the Menorah Cliffs. Most important biblical cities, a place called Chatzor. Today, it's referred to as Tel Chatzor. But what exactly is a Tel? Thousands of years ago, people settled on this location. When their communities were destroyed, either by natural causes or by war, their ruins would be covered over and made flat again. And then another community building for the same reasons in that same location would build there. And this process would happen over and over and over again. Here in Tel Chatzor, due to its importance, archaeologists have already discovered 20 layers of civilization. That means 20 different time periods, different people living here with different customs.
Are you not seeing it, Cheryl?
Lee, I just typed in that I'm not seeing it and everybody can hear. So thank you guys for holding. We'll
Okay.
get to it.
I'll redo it.
Thanks.
Myself. Okay, so if you guys can just go ahead, if that was some just little technical difficulty.
Ways to build, each one unique unto its own.
I have no idea.
Let's now discover Tel Chatzor. Archaeologists consider an excavation of 100 acres to be quite large. Well, they've already uncovered over 200 acres worth of ruins right here at Tel Chatzor, making it one of the largest in Israel. In addition, they've discovered some of the most well-preserved and significant artifacts anywhere in Israel, many of which are on display at the Israel Museum. In addition to this, they've actually found a strata of ruins that date back to the 3rd millennia BCE, roughly 5,000 years ago. And even though little is known of the civilization from back then, it's still an impressive discovery. The first time that Chatzor is mentioned in recorded history is in the execration texts of Egypt, which date back to the 18th century BCE, 3,800 years ago. Then in the capital of the Mari kingdom on the banks of the Euphrates, north of Israel, which is known as Mesopotamia, we have found letters of correspondence between Hatzor and Mari that lasted for decades, proving to us that Hatzor was a significant city in the ancient world with international trade and a mixing of cultures. However, one doesn't need to look further than the Bible to understand that Hatzor is an important, powerful city. When Joshua and the Israelites cross over the Jordan River into the Promised Land, he is commanded to destroy and to burn to the ground only 3 cities: Jericho, Ai, and here in the north, Hatzor. Archaeologists have discovered a layer of ash and the remnants of that massive fire that they have dated using carbon-14 dating and other various methods to have occurred in the 13th century BCE, the same time that the Bible speaks about Joshua, once again proving to us the historical accuracy of the Bible. For me, one of the most impressive finds here in Hatzor are the gates back there. And the reason why is that when you open up the first book of Kings and you read chapter 9, verse 15, it speaks about King Solomon fortifying the cities of Gezer, Megiddo, right here in Hatzor. Well, by the time the archaeologist Yigal Yadin arrives here to Hatzor, both Gezer and Megiddo were thoroughly excavated, and they discovered there a gate with 6 chambers, 3 on each side, that was flanked with a casemate wall. Well, Yigal Yadin, while excavating here, almost mystified the other archaeologists. He staked out a location and he said, right here, we will find Solomon's gates. Well, almost exactly to the dimensions that he specified, archaeologists discovered the 6-chamber gate behind me, proving that these are the gates that Solomon built here in Hatzor. After the reign of King Solomon, the kingdom of Israel is divided. You have the northern 10 tribes and the southern 2 tribes. Here in the north rises a wicked king by the name of Ahab, son of Omri, who will marry the promiscuous pagan priestess Jezebel. He focuses his attention here at Hatzor and builds it up even further than what King Solomon did here, creating new industries like the olive press you can see behind me, as well as a sophisticated water system where he digs down 120 feet to tap into the groundwater, the aquifer that exists here. However, all of this is destroyed in the year 732, when the Assyrians conquer the city of Hatzor and the entire northern 10 tribes. After this destruction of Hatzor at the hands of the Assyrians, Hatzor is never rebuilt to anything very prominent again.
All right. Okay, fantastic. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. This is great. They actually kept the visitor center open just a little longer so you guys can see really a state-of-the-art visitor center here inside. Some of the beautiful pictures I said before, the pelicans that come here, the various songbirds, the kingfisher that's going to come through the land of Israel, kingfishers from Europe and from Asia and from Africa that you're going to see here. Just look at these 3 little birds on my doorstep, right? Look at these beautiful animals that are all found here in the Hula Valley, some of the wild cats here and some lizards as well. But not only that, for the kids as well, they have a lot of interactive educational games, where you could touch the screen, Phil, where you could touch the screen and learn about different time periods, what it was that they did, from the very beginning of the settlement in the yeshuv on the screen here. They have over here virtual reality where you can actually fly through the Hula Valley and over the swamps and to be with the birds during the migration as well. So come around here. I just want to show you the main hall as well. And as I promised, we do have time just for one video, but I want to let you guys know that you're going to receive an email at the end of this tour with a survey. Please, if you can, take the time. It means a lot to us. First of all, it means that you appreciate content coming from Israel enough to take the time to fill out the survey. Leave us your honest opinions, because we love to hear positive feedback, but we're always looking ways to make these virtual tours and content from Israel better for you, because that's what we're doing it for. We are doing it for you guys. And also, if you want to leave any contribution, everything helps to create positive content coming out of Israel in order to spread the truth. We are having another tour on Sunday, the 28th of November. It's going to be from Caesarea, from Herod's capital on the Mediterranean. It's a fantastic site, built 2,000 years ago with a horse track and theater, and the first man-made port. So it's really going to be a very, very interesting tour. And obviously it does get dark early here in Israel this time of the year. We're going to have some great videos from areas around Caesarea as well. I plan on going out there and doing some scuba diving, so we'll be able to actually go underneath the water and to see some of the ruins that are under the water as well. So I'm hoping to see you all there, and all your friends as well. Please pass it along, let people know that these tours are happening, and go ahead and like us on Facebook, Atlanta Israel Coalition. If you want to reach out to me directly, David Sussman Israel Tours, I'd love to hear from you as well. It means a lot to us. So thank you to Cheryl and to Lee and to the hard work that the Atlanta Israel Coalition is doing, to the Jewish Federation, to all the sponsors and partners in the media and the schools of Atlanta. You guys are all fantastic. I'm looking forward to coming to Atlanta again sometime soon, so I get to meet all of you in person. So Lee, go ahead, take it away. Show them the video from the Menorah Cliff so we can enjoy some beautiful views. And thank you for tuning in. As I mentioned before, the cable car is one of the longest ones in all of Israel. It was constructed in 1998 by Kibbutz Menorah and the municipality of Kiryat Shmona. Like most places here in Israel, it is handicap accessible, and the cable cars are wide enough to wheel a wheelchair inside or to bring a mountain bike here. The view here from the cable car is just absolutely stunning. Just over my shoulder over there to the north, maybe about 15 miles, you have the city of Metula, which is the most northern community in all of Israel, on the border of Lebanon. Once you arrive to the top of the Menorah Cliffs from the cable car, you'll immediately notice how much more windy it is up here, as you're on top of a mountain overlooking the Hula Valley. And from here you have a vantage point that gives you the opportunity to see the entire expanse of the valley from the Kinneret all the way to Lebanon. On the other side of the valley, the ridge that goes up over there is the Golan Heights, which was part of Syria up until the Six-Day War of 1967, when Israel was able to liberate that region. During the 19 years that Syria occupied that area, the Hula Valley down below and this narrow ridge that I'm standing on was sandwiched in between Lebanon and Syria. Now that put the villagers down below in a very precarious situation, because the Syrians were constantly bombarding the people down in the Hula Valley. That was, of course, until we were able to liberate it in 1967. But why would this small stretch of land be part of Israel anyway from 1948? And to answer that, well, first and foremost, because it was always part of the land of Israel. But the international community decided to mark the boundaries of the new modern state of Israel, including this area, because of the heroic settlers who came here, the modern Zionists who settled the areas of Metula and Rosh Pina and Kfar Giladi, and of course Tel Dan, which we visited earlier today.
Hi again. So we have two questions.
Hold on one second.
Sure thing.
We got to put the
The earbuds in, right?
Yeah.
So we have a question, why was Hazor never rebuilt?
Excellent question. Why Chatzor was never built? I don't have the answer at the tip of my tongue. I'm so sorry.
Okay, well, the other one is, if the
I think
bird
if I
migration
can
only,
answer that is after the tribes were united. So I don't think Chatzor played an important part anymore. Chatzor was an important city also primarily during the Canaanite period, where there was many different small kingdoms living amongst this general area, and Chatzor had the most powerful king.
okay, thank you. The next one was, if the bird migration only occurs twice a year, what other wildlife or nature observations are available in the Hula Valley during the other times a year?
Well, first of all, the Hula Valley is just a beautiful place to visit. You have the beautiful marshland, the water, the mountains. It's a beautiful pastoral area. But the natural, animals that live here, you have the wild boar, you have nutria, you have otters, you have various types of fish. There are wolves, jackals in this area. So there's definitely a lot of wildlife to be seen during the times that's not the bird migration. And in the winter, there are actually about 15,000 storks or cranes that make the Hula Valley its winter home. It's warm enough for them that they don't go all the way to Africa. They got lazy.
Well, thank you so much for taking us around. It's always so special to visit Israel with you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll see you in a few weeks.
Looking forward to it. All the best, everybody.
Thanks, David. We want to thank our sponsors again, the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta, Consulate General of Israel to Southeast, and Atlanta Jews of Color Council. And thanks to our media partners and our promotional partners. And thanks to those of you who give. We really do appreciate it. We couldn't do this without you. So, please sign up for the other tours. If you can't make it, we do typically send them out. You could find all of the tours on our YouTube page. We're called the Atlanta Israel Coalition, but truly we're all Israel Coalition. I know we have people here from all over the world, and we're thrilled to have you. We promise you, when we go back to face-to-face events, we'll still take you along virtually. So stay in touch. And again, if you can contribute, anything you can contribute would be appreciated. We look forward to seeing you on our next tours. And please don't forget to take the survey. Your feedback is so important to us, to make sure that we're having programming that you can learn from, enjoy, and share. Goodbye, everyone.